Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel, MD, General Physician. In continuity with the previous lecture on IV fluids, this is part 2. All my video lectures are mainly for educative purpose. This will be very helpful to fourth year students for oral exams, for theory, and very helpful during your private practice and when you do internship or if you are working in an ICU. Already we have discussed regarding what is IV therapy, introduction, indications, contraindications, and different types of fluids. Now in this part 2, we are going to discuss regarding what we call as volume, how much to give, so quantity and volume. So this becomes very important, particularly for maintenance fluid, replacement fluid, and during resuscitation. So we'll be going through that. So we divide mainly the patient into different groups by clinical examination and by some of the laboratory parameters. So one of the group we call hypovolumic patient who are pneumonia, sepsis, hemorrhage, gastroenteritis, and many more, where you've got deficiency of water plus electrolytes, and he may have acid base imbalance also. And by blood parameter, particularly, you can identify hypovolemia, that is loss of water, by getting hematocrit. Because water is lost, hematocrit will be elevated. That will suggest that person has got a volume deficiency. Or you can get another parameter to confirm the diagnosis of pneumonia, sepsis, or gastroenteritis, hemorrhage, etc. And also we get albumin report to find out if that is deficient. Second group is hypervolumic, where there is a volume overload. And classical example of those is congestive heart failure, renal failure, cirrhosis, person who is already on IV fluid overload, already he is on IV fluid overload. This will be the group of people in whom IV fluid will be relatively contraindicated. There will be third group of people we call nil by mouth, who are for surgery, who are waiting for surgery, or he is already for planned surgery or emergency surgery. And they may be euvolumic. So they will be waiting for surgery, unsafe swallow, etc. They will require mainly maintenance fluid. They will rarely require resuscitation unless a person who is for a surgery is having acute abdomen, etc. There will be a third group of people who will be euvolumic, or we call normovolumic, and they are in a shock stage. They will require IV fluids with inotropes, and you will have to treat the basic cause. And a fifth group of people, which we should remember, the person who can take very easily orally, they can drink normally, and they do not have any condition where they have to be nil by mouth. This person do not require IV fluids. You will have to treat any basic condition what he is suffering from. Say a person who is having a normovolumic, he can drink normally, he has got pneumonia, you don't require to give IV fluids. So that is the way we divide into four big groups. And the fifth group we say That person who can take orally does not have vomiting or loose motion. He can retain fluid. Those persons do not require IV fluid. So in a hypovolemic patient, you might require a resuscitation or maintenance or replacement. Hypervolemic person usually will not require any IV fluid, while nil by mouth will require maintenance and normovolumic will require resuscitation. Normovolumic shock will require resuscitation. So there are four common words which are being utilized: resuscitation, maintenance fluid, and we call replacement fluid. And we also use the word de-escalation. So we'll be mentioning what do you mean by resuscitation. Resuscitation is for saving life. The method what you adapt, that is we call resuscitation fluid. So you want patient to have normal blood pressure, normal pulse, good perfusion. You resuscitate the patient by giving IV fluid, that we call resuscitation. And when the person is stable, now he is either nil by mouth or he is in a post-operative period. He doesn't have an extra loss of fluid. We call that as maintenance fluid. That is for maintaining the daily requirement. So that is daily requirement. You are covering that daily requirement. We call maintenance fluid, which will require water, potassium, sodium, glucose, etc. While replacement is maintenance plus whatever ongoing loss is going on at that time. So maintenance plus ongoing loss replacement, you call replacement of the fluids. So these are the three common terms which will be coming across very, very frequently. And then we start decreasing the IV fluids, and that we call de-escalation. Or we slowly decrease the amount of fluid given in a day. And then we stop. That is the four different steps. So maintenance fluid we usually calculate by a formula 4-to-1, and which is pre-operative, post-operative, or during surgery, and particularly person who is normovolumic and he is on nil by mouth. This is the most common, and in that mainly we want to give water, we want to give little calorie in the form of nutritional support, we call electrolytes and vitamins, minerals, etc. Approximately it comes to 2.5 liter per day, approximately maintenance fluid. But you can calculate by the formula 4-to-1 or weight plus 40 ml per day. Multiply, you do that. Or normal ongoing loss, when you supplement, then it becomes replacement. So to replace ongoing loss plus correction, that we call as replacement, and this is very frequently done for hypovolemic patient. So it is maintenance plus correction. While resuscitation is usually in a person who is hypovolemic or normovolemic with a shock stage, and to bring up the blood pressure, you give IV fluids with other drugs. We call that as a resuscitation. So it is replacement plus vasopressor and rapid correction to reduce the damage to the organs, and that we call as a resuscitation. So maintenance, replacement, and resuscitation. There are 5 R for resuscitation. 1. Resuscitation is for urgent restoration of circulation, so that you prevent the damage to vital organs. It contains routine maintenance for patient who cannot take orally. You give for routine maintenance. If he has got ongoing loss, maintenance for plus ongoing loss, we call replacement, and always keep it in mind there is something called as a redistribution. When the person is recovering the edema fluid, that is the fluid in a third space or in an extracellular fluid compartment, like in case of sepsis, liver disease, dengue shock syndrome, etc. The fluid will be going back into interstitial compartment and from there into intravascular compartment. This should be kept in mind. That is called as a redistribution. So you must remember that you are trying to restore the circulation, routine maintenance, replacement, redistribution, and never forget to reassess the person while you are giving IV fluids. So these 5 R's should be remembered when you are resuscitating any particular patient. So rapid correction, routine maintenance, replacement, redistribution, and reassessment. This becomes 5R. So resuscitation we have already discussed, and particularly by and large in surgical side they use lingual lactate or lactated ringle, and on a medical side most common fluid which is being utilized is normal saline. And this will include rapid correction and adequate resuscitation, but ongoing losses are there. Then you will have to replace that ongoing losses. And if ongoing losses are inadequate, you will require to resuscitate. Same way, adequately resuscitated now will require, and there is no ongoing losses, it will require only maintenance fluid. But in maintenance fluid, suddenly person gets new losses, he might require a resuscitation or he might require maintenance plus replacement. And when replacement is going on, adequate replacement is done and there is no ongoing losses, now he will require maintenance fluid. So this three is a vicious cycle. You have to keep a watch whenever you are doing a resuscitation or replacement or a maintenance. A person who is on a replacement therapy can go for resuscitation if there is an inadequate replacement and person is developing now circulatory problems. Or a person who is on a maintenance suddenly gets some massive loss, he can go for resuscitation or he might require maintenance plus ongoing loss. So this you should understand that person who is under resuscitation can become stable and then he requires maintenance or he is still not adequately resuscitated but there is an ongoing loss. He will require replacement, that is maintenance plus ongoing losses replacement. And daily fluid replacement is approximately 700 plus urine output. So if urine output is say 2 liters, you will have to replace 2700, and say urine output is 1 liter 17. So that will be, and once the person becomes stable, now if we can take orally, now you switch over to oral maintenance. This will be the main principle of IV fluid. So we use 3 terms: resuscitation, replacement, maintenance, and then we go for de-escalation. So we slowly reduce the amount of IV fluid. So that will be the main principles. Resuscitation for saving life. Replacement is to maintain plus replace whatever is the ongoing losses. We call stabilization, rehydration, and maintenance is optimization. You stabilize the person and optimize the patient. And de-escalation is evacuation. So slowly you switch over from IV fluid to oral maintenance now. So fluid resuscitation, replacement of losses, and correction of electrolyte imbalance, and you can also give an IV fluid with medications. So main goal is adequate hydration and to maintain the perfusion. Usually, we always start with isotonic crystalloids. Nutrition should be taken care. You can use a regular for maintenance fluid, normal saline or ringer lactate. And during that particular period, never forget to reassess or what we call monitor. And you can adjust the rate of giving an IV fluid. Either you increase if he requires a replacement, and if is maintained, we can cut down the IV fluid basal needs. And do not forget to take care of potassium balance. So rapid correction then is mainly for maintenance of blood pressure and circulation. Daily requirement of average adult patient is around 2 to 3 liters of fluid, 1 sodium 1 milliequivalent, sorry, this should be milliequivalent per kilogram per hour. Potassium is also 1 milliequivalent and chloride is 1.5 milliequivalent. This should be milliequivalent. So sodium is daily requirement is 100 milliequivalent, potassium is 100 milliequivalent, and chloride is 150 milliequivalent approximately. Now when you calculate the maintenance fluid in 24 hours, we use 100-50-20 rule. And when you want to calculate per hour, it is 4 to 1, meaning 4 ml per kilogram for first 10 kg, 2 ml for next 10 kg, and then 1 ml for rest of the weight. Approximately it comes to 40 plus the weight of the person, approximately. So that is the best way. And this is 100 ml for first 10 kg, 50 ml for next 10 kg, and 20 ml for anything above 20 kg. So say suppose if the person is 50 kg, so 100 plus 50 plus rest of the 30, 20, that is 60. So 210. Now roughly if you take this is per day. This is per day for 24 hours. So roughly if you calculate here, that is 50 kg plus 40, that is 90 ml per hour, and multiply by 24, it will become this. So this will give you a daily requirement, this will give you per hour. So per hour if you want to calculate, this will be the rule. So this much amount of fluid you will have to give. Say a person is weighing around 60 kg, so 60 plus 40, we call that roughly 100 ml per hour. So that will become 2400 ml in a day. And same if you calculate here, it will be 100 plus 50 plus for another 40 kg, it will be 80 ml. So 180 ml per kilogram, 180 ml for first 10 kg, that will be 1 liter. Then 50 ml per kg for next 10, so it will be 1500. So 1500 plus for 40 kg 800, so 2300. So it comes to this calculation only 2400. So that will be the rough way of calculating daily requirement, maintenance fluid, and hourly maintenance fluid. So 4 to 1 or weight plus 40 maintenance per hour. So that becomes a very simple formula. Now we come to the algorithms for IV fluids. First is assessment to find out whether it is euvolumic, normovolumic, or hypervolumic, and what is the clinical status, whether it is in a shock stage, what it is you will have to examine, and then decide whether he requires resuscitation in the form of airway, breathing, and circulation. Now we call it circulation, airway, and breathing. So circulation should be established as early as possible. So we bring up the blood pressure, we try to maintain the pulse volume, and we try to maintain the peripheral circulation. So that will require a reassessment. Then for that reassessment, for that maintenance of circulation, you will go for fluid resuscitation. So that is called resuscitation therapy. We'll be just discussing little bit on more detail. And in step 3, you go for routine maintenance, and if he requires maintenance plus ongoing losses, then we call that as a replacement and redistribution. So resuscitation, maintenance, replacement, and do look for redistribution, and that you can identify by reassessment after correction. So do look for this redistribution, and then finally you go into we call de-escalation. So we'll be going through that. So this part we are dividing into different. First, always have a good checkup, and in that, if systolic blood pressure is less than 100, heart rate is more than 90, capillary refilling time is more than 2 seconds, and peripheral extremities are cold and clammy, respiratory rate is more than 20, and new score is more than 5, temperature, if you have a passive leg raising at 45 degree, there is no fluid responsiveness, this will suggest that person requires resuscitation. And for that resuscitation, history, clinical examination, then monitoring by news or fluid balance chart or by weight, simple way, and in a laboratory parameter, we have hematocrit value, blood urea, creatinine, electrolytes, etc. And then you decide what he needs. You select the fluid. You select any electrolyte has to be corrected. And if a person can take orally, then you try to correct by oral. And if he cannot, then you will require to replace the fluid and do reassessment. And if you do a reassessment and if now the person is stabilized, then you can go for a maintenance. If he is stabilized but still he has got ongoing losses, then you will have to go for replacement. And during that replacement, etc., you should also look for redistribution. Is there any factor which is doing redistribution? This should be taken care. So when, what, how much, how fast will be depending upon resuscitation or maintenance or replacement, what he requires. So all those things will be decided by a good clinical examination along with laboratory parameters. So first you have to make out whether patient is stable or unstable. Unstable patient will always require rapid correction and maintenance of circulation. We call as resuscitation. While doing a clinical examination, volume status should be examined. So person may be unstable, but volume status may be U, where he requires less amount of fluid volume, but he will require more of ionotropes. And if he is say hypovolumic, he will require more of fluid for resuscitation. And simultaneously you should look for electrolyte imbalance and acid base imbalance. And accordingly you will have to select the IV fluid. You should also look for cardiovascular status, renal status and liver status, because this can alter the selection of fluid. We have already discussed before. And simultaneously you should also get a history whether the person is diabetic, hypertensive, or is having any CNS involvement. You try to identify etiology, so you will have to treat the basic etiology also. So all those things, after looking at all this entire picture, means whether the patient is stable or unstable, volume status, electrolyte imbalance, acid base imbalance, cardiovascular status, renal, liver, CNS status, diabetic or hypertensive, whether it is controlled or uncontrolled, and try to identify the etiology of at present what is the status. And then you can decide what fluid to be given, how much to be given, how fast to be given, and what steps you will take for correction. All those things will be decided after doing all this fill in the blanks. So while doing a reassessment assessment first, always look for volume status. Look there if person is having ongoing losses. Can person take orally or not? And then after that you have to put them into a group, euvolumic, hypovolumic or hypervolemic. And if person is having any expected losses or expected gains, etc., and clinically whether he is stable or unstable, then you decide whether he requires resuscitation, maintenance or replacement. So this is absolutely necessary. That is when to give, what to give, how much to give and how fast to be give. That will be decided by all these factors. And in that you will decide whether it is resuscitation or whether it requires maintenance or it requires maintenance plus ongoing losses, we call replacement. And once the person, you decide that person requires resuscitation, assess the fluid status, give the fluid bolus of almost 500 ml of crystalloids. Most commonly utilized is normal saline over 15 minutes. Reassess again. Now suppose the person is not stabilized and he has not shown any improvement, he will still need a fluid. Again you can go for further volume, and if he improves, then you can now start giving an IV fluids and identify the etiology. If he has got electrolyte imbalance, you will have to select the fluid depending upon that condition, what type of acid base imbalance he is having. So mainly you will use crystalloids for that particular purpose. And once he is stable, now you will switch over to maintenance or switch over to replacement if he is having ongoing losses. So that will be during resuscitation. This is called NEWS. We call National Early Warning Score. This was published by National Health Society of UK, and this is a wonderful way, very simplified way. You hardly require any laboratory parameter, where you have clinical assessment, respiratory rate, oxygen saturation, which can be easily available, any supplemental oxygen is given or not, temperature, blood pressure, that is systolic blood pressure, heart rate and level of consciousness. And depending upon that, you give a score, right from 0 to 3 and here 3 to 0. So if respiratory rate is say towards bradycardia, you give 3. If it is 12 to 20, we give 0 score. And if it is tachypnea, we give 3 plus. So depending upon that, you give a score, and higher the score, the chances of warning sign will be more. If person score is 0, means person is well stable. Say person's respiratory rate is 20, oxygen saturation is 96, he doesn't require any supplement, his temperature is normal, systolic blood pressure is normal, heart rate is normal, and level of consciousness is fully conscious. Now this person do not require resuscitation. He will require either maintenance or replacement. But say if he is going towards this side or he is going toward this side, then he will require either resuscitation or maybe maintenance or replacement, any one of those. So this becomes a very good. At your leisure time, you can go through. This is, and you can keep it in your clinic also. This is a very good chart, very simple, clinical parameters. There are no laboratory parameters. So algorithm for assessment. And how much to give, how fast to give, and volume. That will be decided. Now there are other practical clinical parameters where you evaluate one by history, chief complaints, physical examination, laboratory parameter. So we try to put them into different groups. Mainly we want to find out whether it is hypovolemic, hypervolemic or euvolemic. So there will be one group of people who are in shock stage and they have lost massive blood loss. And this particular group of people very frequently will have tachycardia, delayed capillary refilling time, pallor, altered mental status, weak or absent pulse. Very, very typical. And clinical signs of hypovolemia. So this will be a group which will be fitting with hypovolemic shock. They will be dehydrated. They will be hypotensive. And they will be in a shock stage. So this will be the group. You can have an acute and massive loss. You can have a second group of people where there is no blood loss, but there is pure water loss. We'll mention that as a dehydration, and they may be in a shock stage. They will be hypotensive to a shock stage. Person might have a blood loss like hemorrhage, we call hemorrhagic shock, and plasma loss, particularly in case of extensive burns, very typical. There may be a gradual loss. This will be usually hypotensive, and then later stage they may go into a shock stage. You will have some group of people who will come with euvolemic shock stage. Very frequently these are secondary due to cardiovascular disease, say classical example acute MI, or say maybe septic shock, etc. So cardiogenic septic shock, anaphylaxis, or they may be overloaded, fluid overloaded already, where they will have edema, JVP elevated, ascites, etc. We call hypervolemic people. In this, IV fluid will be contraindicated, and if at all if you have to give, you will have to be very, very cautious. Classical example, hypoproteinemia, congestive heart failure, pulmonary hypertension, portal hypertension, cirrhosis of liver, that group. And good number of time, person with hypervolemia can have cerebral edema and raise intracranial pressure. In that, selection of a fluid will be very, very important. You cannot give 5% dextrose. And person is overhydrated, either because of IV fluid overload. Some of the signs will be very, very important. You will be able to identify dehydration clinically by skin turgor, mucous membrane moisture, thirst, capillary refilling time, examination of eye, shrunken eyeball, tachycardia, low volume pulse. So this will be some of the finding which will be very, very important. Loss of elasticity, capillary refilling time is increased, dry mucous membrane, skin remains tented, etc. And you will get a signs of shock in the form of tachycardia, etc. And laboratory parameter, you can go for PEC cell volume, that will be increased. Total plasma protein will be elevated. Urine specific gravity will be also increased. This will be roughly the parameter which will be laboratory parameter which might help you to find out the severity of volume loss, or it is euvolemic or hypervolemic. So those will be very, very important. So arterial pressure, lactate level, capillary refilling time, oliguria, motile skin may be of importance. There are advantages and disadvantages mentioned here in this slide. At your leisure time you can go through. So how much importance it will be? Oliguria is quite sensitive. Motile skin is also quite sensitive. Lactate level will be very helpful if the person is in a shock stage. Capillary refilling time tells you that there is a diminished peripheral perfusion. You require a rapid correction. And if there is an arterial pressure which is markedly low, that is also in favor of hypotension and shock stage. So this becomes very, very helpful in clinical assessment. While assessing the fluid status, you will have to divide into hypovolemic and dehydration separately. Hypovolemic means there is a loss of sodium plus water, while dehydration is mainly loss of water. This will lead to pure hypovolemia and patient will be hypernatremic, while here he will be hemodynamically unstable, but he will have both loss. So sodium level will be normal, but he will be hemodynamically unstable, and that you can utilize while treatment because the treatment in both condition will be different. So you can assess by history and physical examination. This is already we have mentioned good number of things. So look for signs of hypovolemia, calculate plasma osmolality, urinary creatinine ratio, and look for venous blood gases to find out acid base imbalance. So those will be some of the things which will be required before you decide regarding the treatment part of it. So fluid balance chart will be very important, input and output chart, stool chart, whether he is losing excess of water by means of stool, daily weight chart, and what drug he is on should be maintained. So these are all the things which will be helping you to assess the fluid status. So assessment should be done. Then you treatment options you can decide. Monitoring should be done and follow up, and you find out what is a outcome of your treatment part, and then again reassess and decide whether it requires maintenance, resuscitation, or replacement depending upon that. So while monitoring a fluid therapy, you look at the urine output, total protein, because you can have a protein loss along with the fluid loss. Just replacing a fluid will not replace the protein part. You look at the skin turgor, these are clinical. Urine output is, you don't require a laboratory parameter. Skin turgor, clinical examination. Blood pressure, also clinical. Look for edema. Look for mucous membrane color. PEX cell will be laboratory parameter. So PEX cell increase will suggest that he is towards volume deficit, and you also calculate the total solids, etc. So look for all these findings which will give you an idea regarding a fluid therapy. And always don't forget to have a blood gas evaluation. And even if it is venous, it is also helpful. You can go through my video lectures on ABG. So in a fluid resuscitation, you will have to decide and maintain the blood pressure. Urine output should improve. Look at the jugular venous pressure and also look at the urinary sodium concentration while correcting by resuscitation method, because it is a rapid correction. A wrong selection of a fluid can produce complications. So you will have to decide whether it is hypovolemic, hypervolemic, or normovolemic, or whether the person has got hyponatremia, hypernatremia, why he has developed a sodium imbalance, why he has developed a acid base imbalance. All those should be well established, and then you select the fluid. By and large, in a pure hypovolemic patient, you will select Ringer lactate or normal saline. But normal saline is likely to produce non-anionic gap metabolic acidosis, or we call hyperchloremic metabolic acidosis. So while using saline, you should be cautious. We have already mentioned that. And before you start a resuscitation, look for agitation, confusion, tachypnea, hypotension, tachycardia, low volume pulse, cold clammy extremities, decrease or no urine output, altered level of consciousness, and even there will be drop in a temperature. And you can do a simple test of leg raising. Just maintain it for 5 minutes and look whether there is any effect of that leg raising. If there is a slight improvement in a systolic blood pressure, he will be responsive to your IV fluids. So that is a very simple test which you can do before starting a fluid resuscitation. So that becomes a very important. CVP examination will be very helpful. You can give 500 milligram, 500 ml of colloid you can give, and then assess whether it is a fluid responder or fluid non-responder. And another very simple way is give crystalloid instead of colloid and see the response. That will be very important way. So if mean arterial pressure is less than 65, central venous pressure is less than 8, urine output is markedly reduced, oxygen concentration is reduced, there is high level of lactate, there is altered mental status, you must resuscitate. And person, once you start resuscitating, and if his mean arterial pressure comes closer to 65, more than 65, that is we say closer to 70, central venous pressure is 10, urine output is more than 0.5 ml per kilogram per hour, approximately we say that if a person is weighing say 60 kg, that is 330 ml, 30 ml per hour, and if oxygen concentration increases to more than 70, we call close to 90, lactate level reduces and mental status improves, we say that person is adequately resuscitated. So that becomes a good way of assessing how much resuscitation has been done. There will be another way, we already tell you, that elevate the limb to 45 degree, maintain it for 5 minutes, and then have a blood pressure record. If there is an increase in a blood pressure by 9%, person is fluid responsive, and if there is no change, fluid will be less responsive to your fluid challenge. So try to look for that. You can also assess by looking at the inferior vena cava collapsibility by doing a good ultrasound. That will also help you to identify the fluid status. Once the patient is stabilized, now he can be shifted to normal maintenance, and we have already told you that normal maintenance will require fluid, nutrition, electrolyte, that is sodium, potassium chloride, etc. And that requirement is roughly weight plus 40 per hour. So if weight is 60 plus 40, 100 ml per hour, which will come to approximately 2400 ml per day. So that will be rough calculation. And if person is having ongoing losses, or if he is still having electrolyte imbalance or acid base imbalance, you will have to correct that, and that we call as replacement. So ongoing losses you will replace. So ongoing losses you will have to replace, and you will have to keep a watch for redistribution. So if a person is developing redistribution at that particular time, you will have to change your mode of treatment, and that will be very common in congestive cardiac failure, CKD, liver failure, and don't forget dengue shock syndrome. In this condition, you will have a redistribution. So we have discussed regarding when to start. Now we will be discussing regarding when to stop, when to start fluid removal, that is de-escalation, and when to stop the removal. This will be all the points which you have to keep it in mind. So starting with the fluid we have already done, and when you stop the IV fluid, once the person is completely stabilized, his pulse is normal, blood pressure is normal, capillary refilling time is normal, person is fully conscious, and there is no acid base imbalance, there is no electrolyte imbalance, now you can start doing de-escalation and remove that. Now sometime you might require start removal, that is by dialysis, particularly in a person with a CKD with gross electrolyte imbalance, acid-base imbalance, or person has got some poisoning, etc. So those things will be quite important. So they say rescue, that is resuscitation, optimization, that is maintenance and replacement, and after optimization you stabilize the person. Now he will need only maintenance. Optimization will be done by replacement, and once the person is completely stabilized, now you will do de-escalation, and short it is called as ROSE. R for resuscitation, O for optimization, that is replacement, S for stabilization, that is we call as maintenance, and E for de-escalation. This should be done. So that is given here. Salvage is resuscitation. Then you optimize, that is by we call replacement, that is maintenance plus replacement. Then you stabilize, and once the person is stabilized, you go to de-escalation. At your leisure time, you can go through. Now we are going to the another part, that is route. Now normally we know that it can be by peripheral route or it can be by central route, that is by central lines or PICC or skin tunnel, that is Hickman line. This will be the different routes. Once in a while in a children you can go for intraosseous. This is peripheral line, this is central line, and these are the different materials which you can utilize. This is central line, where you can give an IV fluid, you can go for even TPN, and you can give certain drugs which you want to give intravenous. So these are different modes: peripheral, PICC, where you can give by peripheral vasculature or by superior vena cava. Tip will terminate in a superior vena cava. There are peripheral midline catheters, there are Hickman lines, etc. And in a children, you can use intraosseous. So peripheral, PICC, central line, intraosseous are different modes of giving IV fluids. Now, we go to a part what we call as how fast you give, speed. Now, by and large, a general, usually for maintenance, it is a slow route because you have to give it over a period of 24 hours. While in a resuscitation, it is always a fast. Also, in case of a replacement, sometimes you require little faster than what you are giving for maintenance. But in resuscitation, always it is a rapid, fast correction because we don't want organ damage. So in a severe shock stage, you might require a fast. For a bolus, you require a fast. While giving a slow drip, usually if you use micro drips, it will be very, very useful because it will never go fast. And very frequently certain drugs, you always give micro drips. And that is also, you use the additional help of infusion pumps while giving the drugs. So these are the different modes of giving an IV fluids and IV drugs. So for maintenance, by and large slow. For resuscitation, usually rapid. And in resuscitation, while giving certain drugs like inotropes, vasopressor drugs, etc., it has to be given by micro drip and by infusion pumps. IV fluid in a shock stage is given in a bolus, while in a maintenance fluid, it is always given slowly. It is over a period of long time. Initially, while giving a bolus for resuscitation, it is given rapid, and mainly we utilize crystalloid rather than colloids. So usually you give 500 ml in a patient rapidly. But in a patient with a severe congestive heart failure, you give only 250 ml of challenge. And patient should be reassessed after each IV bolus and see that person does not worsen. We already mentioned you can give a bolus, intermittent infusion or continuous drip form. This will be very frequently for maintenance, while intermittent infusion may be very frequently for with bolus will be very frequently in a case of resuscitation. And this micro drips will be very frequently again in a resuscitation, which will be given by pumps, infusion pumps. This will give you a small quantity of fluids, particularly where the person is euvolumic and in a shock stage. So rapid, very slow, and whenever you want to give a very slow, usually micro drips you utilize. So in a normal blood set, 10 drops is equal to 1 ml, while in regular set, 15 drops per ml, and in a micro drips, it will be 60 drops will be there for 1 ml. So whenever you are giving by micro drips, it will be 60 drops will make 1 ml, while regular drips 15 drops. And if when you are using a blood set, the diameter of the drip is bigger, so it will be 10 drops per ml. So this you must keep it in your mind. So depending upon how much you give, accordingly you have to mention. Just don't mention 2 pints of normal saline, 2 pints of Ringal lactate and 1 pint of say dextrose normal saline. But how fast to be given, in how much time, etc. So roughly you can say that if you calculate the drops, it will be so much fluid in liter per day. So say I want to give a 3 liters per day. So I'll give 30 drops per minute roughly. If I want to go give 4 liters, it will be 40 drops per minute. So it will make approximately 4 liter per day. This is a rough but quite important. So we call rule of 10. So in rule of 10, say I want to give 1 liter, so I'll give only 10 drops per minute. I want to give 4 liters in a day, I'll give 40 drops per minute. Roughly we usually give maintenance is 2 to 3 liters. So 20 to 30 drops per minute. So that is called rule of 10. Per hour, it is rule of 4. Rule of 4. So I'll just show you that. In a rule of 4, drops per minute will be here. So I want to give so many ml per hour. Say I want to give per hour 200 ml. So that will be 50 drops per minute. Divide by 4. That will be rule for 4. Rule of 4. Fluid in ml per hour. So I want to give say 500 ml. So I'll give 125 drops per minute. This will be the rule of 4. And this is very, very important while resuscitation. So roughly we have already mentioned, but we say that volume per hour, number of micro drips per minute will be mentioned here. It will be 60 drops per minute, while routine set will be 15 drops per minute. So do remember, 15 drops in a routine set, in a micro drips, 60 drops will make per minute will make 1 ml. Now we come to last part, that is when to stop. Now very, very important. If blood pressure is maintained, hemostasis is achieved, means person is absolutely stable, blood pressure is stable, pulse is stable, good volume, peripheral circulation is established, you have achieved all your targets regarding your pulse, blood pressure, respiration, temperature, etc. And there is no local or systemic complications. Now you can stop. That will be the time. This will be overall view. Points to remember: always monitor at every 15 minutes or half an hour or 1 hour after starting IV fluid. Always check what type of solution has been given. Look at the site also and look at what rate you are giving. Check for the signs of edema at local sites. If there is any pain, if there is any leakage, at a regular interval, reassessment should be done. While changing the bags, always look properly for what solution has been given, has been properly according to the prescription. Label dressings and tubings. You should look at the proper labels, dressings and tubings, whatever are there. IV tubings and dressings are changed every 72 hours. So that should be done. And while monitoring capillary refilling time, pulse, blood pressure, JVP, skin turgor, auscultation of respiratory system, cardiovascular system, particularly for gallop rhythm, and in lung, basal crackles, edema. Look for peripheral edema, sacral edema, urine output, weight assessment, etc. should be done. All those should be done while reassessment. And then only, this already we have discussed, if you have reached mean arterial pressure more than 70, we say, central venous pressure 10, urine output is more than 30 ml per hour per kilogram, that is per hour, approximately say 60 kg if we take. Oxygen concentration is good, lactate level has been normalized, and mental status is normal. Now you know that you have stabilized the patient. Now you can start de-escalation and switch over to maintenance, fluid, etc. can be done. Always look for a fluid volume overload while you are giving an IV fluids, and particularly in a person with CKD and congestive heart failure. Also in a person with portal hypertension. And don't forget dengue. And overload signs are edema, difficulty in breathing, crackles, hypertension. Person will start having cough, JVP will be elevated, person will start developing orthopnea, and person will have a large volume pulse and tachycardia. Best is prevention, sodium restriction, fluid restriction, and you might require diuretics, and if not, you might require even dialysis sometimes, not always. What are the common complications of IV therapy? There are some of the complications of IV therapy like infiltration, phlebitis, hypothermia, local infections. Local complications in the form of extravasation of fluid can end up with local necrosis, phlebitis, thrombosis, thrombophlebitis, hematoma, local infections, venous spasm, infiltrations, and nerve damage. While systemic complications like septicemia, pyrogen fevers, air embolization, fluid overload, speed shock, catheter embolism, etc. can take place in a systemic complications. This is extravasation of fluid can end up with lot of other complications. This is irritant fluid extravasation. You can have even necrosis and cellulitis. You can see cellulitis here, thrombophlebitis after IV fluids. Quite common. Now always remember in summary, does patient need IV fluid for resuscitation? You should answer properly. What are the patient routine maintenance need? Then is he having electrolyte imbalance? Is he having any existing fluid loss? What is the patient current fluid and electrolyte status? Whether is hypovolumic, euvolumic or hypervolumic, and is there any electrolyte imbalance, particularly sodium and potassium, and if there is any acid base imbalance also, and is patient having any redistribution problem, particularly in case of congestive heart failure, CKD, portal hypertension, and don't forget dengue. What fluid shall I prescribe? All these answers should be there. This is a golden rule. Treat IV fluid as a prescription like any other medication. No IV fluid is routine. Determine the patient status. Does he need maintenance or resuscitation or replacement? Choose the fluid based on coexisting electrolyte imbalance, AKI, CKD, congestive heart failure, acute myocardial infarction, shock, cor pulmonale, age, diabetes, hypertension, and others. Don't forget about additional IV medication what you are giving. Choose the rate of the fluid administration properly, depending upon the weight, maintenance, clinical status, AKI, CKD, hypertension, myocardial infarction, etc. Avoid fluid in a patient with an volume overload like edema, congestive heart failure, left ventricular failure, pulmonary edema, cerebral edema, overhydrated patient. Always reassess whether the patient needs continuous fluid. If person can take orally, starts food and liquid orally as early as possible. IV fluid can save the life, but excess of IV fluid can do the harm and can kill the patient by left ventricular failure, congestive heart failure, or by cerebral edema. Now always answer, does he need fluid? How much quantity? By looking at the hydration status. What type of fluid he requires, depending upon acid-base balance, electrolyte imbalance, etc. And depending upon all these three, how fast I should give, when to stop. Look for the quantity and quality and rate. And that can be altered by cardiovascular status, CNS status, kidney status, respiratory status, and liver. Look for all those. So take home message again, fluid should be treated like a prescription of any drugs. Children are more vulnerable to rapid fluid loss. Always use rule of 4-1 for maintenance. While monitoring, look at the weight, urine output, serum sodium concentration, PEC cell, etc. As far as possible, try to give the maintenance fluid as early as possible by oral route. Dextrose normal saline with half normal saline is the ideal fluid for most of the children for maintenance therapy. And dextrose normal saline or Ringal lactate is for adult. Replacement of the fluid should be prompt and appropriate. All this should be remembered. So I end my lecture here. If you like this particular lecture, please don't forget to press button like, subscribe, and press bell icon so you can get a notice of a second video when I upload. You can share with your friends also if you feel that it will be beneficial to your friends. Thank you for taking out time. I know that your time is valuable and I appreciate you for spending some of the time with me. See you in next lecture.